It's episode 174.
The Ultimate Deck Podcast. Need a show about outdoor living? This is where it's at. With your hosts, Shane Chapman and Way Laurent. Thank you for tuning in. Now let the show begin. Yeah. The Ultimate Deck Podcast. Let's go.
Welcome back to the Ultimate Deck Podcast.
Welcome.
Bryce, I want some more volume in my headphones.
Oh,
Let's fix that live now.
is that this one?
Thanks.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
Welcome back. We're on a bit of a hiatus because we've been busy with home shows, so apologies for the bit of a break. But now the good news is that you're going to get a whole bunch of episodes posted all at once and some good
back to back.
to do. Today in the studio, we've got the folks from GH Leveler, Jeff and Collette. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thanks for having us.
So it worked out really well because you had to bring us some product anyway.
Exactly. Yep.
Yep.
Might as well get the podcast done as well.
Killed two
exactly.
stones with one bird.
That's right.
Two stones with one bird.
We usually kind of mess around for a little bit today, but we won't in like to save you some time.
Yeah, we
But,
have guests here today,
we
so we gotta
Keep on our best behavior.
exactly.
Yeah.
But since you guys are very well known to at least Saskatchewan lumber yards that you're in and around quite a bit because you guys are from Saskatchewan,
Right.
Morse.
Exactly.
But for those listening, because it's 75% of our audience is in the States, they might not
Yep.
know who you are. So why don't you give us a quick introduction to yourselves personally, where you're from, what you do, and then tell us about the Leveler a little bit.
I'll let you start.
Okay. Well, Jeff Heschel, we've got a product called the Leveler. We're based out of Morse, Saskatchewan, so just 125 miles west of here on the number 1 highway. And we manufacture and sell the Leveler footing, an adjustable universal footing for deck, steps, patios, actually any product. And it's a pretty simple product. Basically, it works like the adjuster on your deep freeze or on your fridge, where if it's on level, you can screw it in or screw it out and level your project. So that's one of the things that we do. And of course, spring, that's something that we get really busy with this time of year.
Yeah, so I'm Collette. I'm Jeff's wife, and I'm originally from Willowbunch, Saskatchewan.
There we go. The lovely town of Willowbunch
Right? I'm very
in
very
the valley.
familiar.
It's
a beautiful little
It's
town.
a beautiful little
It is
place.
nice.
It's
yeah.
gorgeous, yeah.
Nice little golf course and park there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sure.
Yep. So we started this in 2000. Well, Jeff actually built a deck at our home in 2009.
Yeah.
And and he couldn't find anything that he felt like worked or looked good, so he went and built it. And then when oil and gas crashed a few years later, then we thought, well, we have a little more time on our hands. Let's pursue this. So we did.
So what were you guys doing at the time before you came up with this little invention? What were your day jobs?
Well, we also have a company called GH Well Services. We provide boilers and volume fluid heating to the oil and gas industry. And of course, everybody who's in that industry knows that it crashed pretty hard. So for us, it was kind of a wake-up call. We kind of thought, well, what can we do now in order to try and use kind of a lot of the resources that we have.
Yep.
So we had a shop and welders and some extra staff. So we decided, well, I got thinking about this leveler that I'd built for my deck, and I had lots of people over the years ask about it and ask me where I got it and where they could buy them, and I just said, well, I just went down to the shop and built it.
You can't.
Yeah, you can't. But then, so when it crashed, I thought, maybe I should pursue this because it's something that we can do. We've got the resources to do it. And I also got thinking of a lot of people, we've all got uncles or dads or whatever that have built something and then 5 or 10 years later down the road said, I should have patented that. I should have sold that. So I thought, well, I'm going to seize the opportunity now. This is a sign. And that's exactly what I did.
So like you said, it's a fairly simple project, and you made it out of things that were kind of already in your shop, presumably the first time.
Yeah.
So what didn't you like about what was on the market at the time that you felt like you needed to make your own?
Well, there was products on the market at the time that you could use. Where in our town, we've got a very high water table.
Okay.
Very saline soil. So kind of like Regina here. So
Kind of like everywhere.
yeah,
Yeah. Welcome to
shifting
Saskatchewan.
and heaving is a big problem.
Yeah.
So I knew, and a lot of the decks there are built on grade, like they're built, not with large piles and stuff like that, because it's an issue. Because if they don't move, then the house will move, especially the older houses.
Right, yeah.
So I went out to buy a product to do that, and most of them were made out of threaded rod and a little bit of square tubing, and they, to me, looked ugly and they looked flimsy, and they didn't look like they belonged, and they weren't that user friendly. You had to put them in a pyramid block, and so if it's at the edge of your deck, it was hard to finish. So I just thought there's something that could be simpler, more aesthetically pleasing, and easier. So that's how I came up with it.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons that people have adopted them so quickly and easily is because of the aesthetic.
They
of
just
them.
look so much better.
Because there is that like the old whatever you want to call them, cottage blocks, elephant feet, pyramid blocks,
Yeah.
whatever you
Yeah.
want to call them, they're ugly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Just
ugly.
aesthetically not nice to look at. The other problem that we always ran into is if somebody was doing a low to the ground deck with a flush beam at the end, and the post dropped at the edge of the deck. Well, those feet they flared
Right,
out.
they make the whole
So they stuck past the edge of the
footprint,
deck,
yeah.
and then that person's like, "Well, I want to close my deck in, but those blocks are in the way."
Yeah, and you couldn't do it.
Every time, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Well, yeah, the blocks are in the way. You'll just leave those kind of exposed." But with your product, you don't have to. They hide perfectly underneath the 4x4 or 6x6 post. They don't stick out at all.
No.
So it's
Right.
easy. Like I've done them when I was still I was done building, but helped my neighbor do a deck, and we put a post sleeve over the thing, and it hid the level hid right underneath it.
Yep.
You could slide it up to get at it, to adjust it, and slide it back down, but you can hide them no problem.
Yeah.
Which is nice aesthetically.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing for that type of deck as well is before the leveler came along, you would go get one of these threaded rod things, and you had maybe a 9-inch one or a 12-inch one. And so when you tried to build a deck straight out your front door, you still ended up having to excavate down quite a bit to
Right,
get these
yep.
darn things in there, which was, a pain. Whereas now, you could just have your ground prepped with your crushed rock or gravel or whatever and stick them right on that. You don't have to excavate down and yet get nice and low to the ground.
Yeah, because your product probably only adds about 3 to 4 inches
Yes, yeah.
to the
Exactly.
overall height of the deck, so it can still stay pretty
Right.
non-suspect. Yeah.
Right, but then it's also fully customizable. It's like making your own telepost or jack post.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, you just cut the post whatever size you need it and then add the leveler to it.
Right. How'd you come up with the name?
Pretty self-explanatory. Yeah.
You mentioned before that you called the other ones those threaded rod thingies. I was thinking maybe you should have used that for your name.
Threaded rod.
The threaded rod thingy.
It was interesting. The leveler seems like such a simple and easy name for it.
Yeah.
I was concerned when I come up with that name, would we be able to trademark that name?
Yeah.
And because obviously, it's probably out there.
Right.
And actually we were able to trademark that
Really?
name.
Yeah, we
The only
got it.
difference is the leveler has 2 L's in leveler instead of 1 L.
Right.
Okay.
But sometimes when you've got a really descriptive name, they're hard to trademark, but we were able to do that. So
Probably because there's been so many people in the past that have had their product for doing whatever it does, and they also thought the same thing. Well, we'll never be able to just call it the leveler.
Yeah.
Like that'll be
Yeah.
gone already, and nobody ever
Yeah.
looks into it. Right?
No one ever
Exactly.
tries.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so from the time that you guys built your first set for your own deck to the time that you had maybe I should make these. What kind of time span? You mentioned a couple of years at least.
Well, yeah, because oil and gas crashed in 2014. We weren't impacted until 15.
Right.
So it was like 6 years, I guess.
2009 you made them for your
Yeah.
deck. Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's when Jeff he did a patent search first, of course, and
Right.
it came back clean. So then we applied for a patent, and we actually now are we have a patent in the
Patent
U.S.
approved. Oh, nice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have
Yeah,
our
we
U.S.
just got
patent,
that, yeah.
and we're working on the Canadian one right now.
Yeah.
So is that process for getting a patent as scary and expensive as they say it is?
It's long.
You don't need to tell me dollars, but
It
It's
is.
long,
Yeah.
It
yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Especially I think in the last few years, I think with COVID, there's been a lot of people sitting around and brainstorming and
Right, coming up with ideas.
flooding the patent office.
Yeah.
So that's been long. But the thing is, when you patent something, no matter what it is, there's always going to be similar products out there. Whether they do the same thing or not, the application can be similar. So you have to be prepared to spend not only the money to get all your patent documents made and submitted, but then you have to spend money to defend it, because the patent agents, their job is to make sure that you're proprietary, that what they patent is something that you've got a different nuance than somebody else.
Right.
And they'll challenge you on that. And depending on your patent agent, it can be really arduous. Our patent agent in the U.S. was very arduous. I mean, he challenged us off furniture built in Germany in the 1800s. You know, like
Holy smokes.
And every time you have to answer that.
It took 7 years because we started that process in 15, and we got the patent this year.
Wow. And so they expire, right? They're
20 years
or so,
after
20 years.
you get it.
Yeah.
And then you can renew it, or it just becomes open.
Then
Intel.
It becomes open. Now, I guess if you wanted to go through that, you could make some sort of change to it.
Right.
Or,
paint it blue instead.
or whatever. There's things you can do in order to make it proprietary again.
Right.
But the good part for me, I mean, I really wasn't fazed by the time span it took.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you become patent pending, as soon as you submit your application to the patent offices, and we submitted ours to the Canadian and the U.S. patent offices, then you're proprietary. So that time that it takes to get your patent, you're still protected.
Right.
So it's like free marketing time. So,
I see. I always kind of wondered about that when you saw patent pending on things. I was like, what's the benefit of doing that? Just to say that you're working on it? But I guess if it gives you some protections during that period, that's good. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So what was when you first decided to start manufacturing, I guess, first of all, before I get there, has it changed from the time you first made your very first set to now? Have you changed anything about it, or is it still the exact same?
It has changed a little bit. Just because when I first made it, it was stuff that was laying around my shop. So I had, big washers that I had, used on a trailer frame, and had these bolts laying around, and I made it out of that. And then I started buying a stock washer for that and making jigs to drill it out and stuff. And it eventually progressed to now.
And we painted.
Oh yeah, we paint them by hand. I made a jig and stuff, and now they're built by a manufacturer for us in Oakville, Manitoba. They're the washer parts, the top and the bottom, are all laser cut, and
cool.
They're welded by a robot and then powder coated. And so that part it's changed a little bit.
You also changed the diameter of the holes.
The original holes, when I built the first one, it would take like about a number 8 or number 10 deck screw to hold them on.
Right.
But as we got into it, we found out that a lot of people are using different kinds of fasteners and structural fasteners for that. So we made those 3 holes, we made them a 1/4 inch to take different kinds of fasteners.
Right.
I see.
So that's really the only difference. The application is the same, but it has evolved a little bit.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we also developed the leveler base plate, which could be added to it. You can still adjust it, and it's just an add-on. Sometimes contractors, I think, if they're up to a little bit of extra scrutiny from a inspector or something, they like to add them on. Some people that like seeing saddles like to add them on. Mm-hmm. So it's something that's not necessary, because everything where the leveler is used is weight bearing.
Yep.
But the customers were asking us for it, so we developed them.
So and that's because the leveler kind of almost floats on the ground. You could tap con it down or something if you wanted to, but
you could.
But the plate came out to give it lateral support, so it couldn't be kind of bumped or kicked laterally, right? Is that right?
And the thing is, if you would tap on it down,
as well.
For uplift too,
In the U.S., they obviously have.
Is that more the intent of it?
Yes.
For the uplift more than the lateral?
That's the biggest reason that we developed it, was for uplift in the U.S. market.
Gotcha.
But then we found that people were just buying them, anyhow. So we just kept building them. And then, of course, the leveler could be fastened down itself without the plate going. The plate is beveled, so it'll slip over top, and you can still adjust it at any time. But if you would attach the leveler down and screw it down, you'd have to take the screws out to adjust it.
Right.
Okay.
Where with the plate, you don't have to. But still, probably about 80% of the people still use them without the plate.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's kind of what we see too. The plates don't sell a whole bunch, but maybe a few a year kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I'd say maybe 10 or 15% of our sales are the plates.
Right.
So,
okay.
But
So tell me about the first time that you took this into a lumberyard or a store, or I don't know how you decided to start getting this like out of the shop and into a store somewhere, but like how did that go? What was the response that you got?
that was good. So when I decided that we were going to pursue this thing, instead of spending a whole bunch of money on my patents and stuff like that, I did my patent search. My patent search come back clean, so that I knew I could probably would have some success getting a patent.
Right.
So the next thing I did is I just printed myself up a non-disclosure a piece of paper, and I took it to a lumber store in Moose Jaw.
Yeah.
And the fella that owns it said, we'll get our staff around and we'll take a look at this thing and we'll see what they say. So I had him sign the non-disclosure. We went around the lumber desk. I said, I've developed this. I used it on my own deck. And so what do you guys think of this thing? Do you think you'll be able to sell it?
Right.
And they said, man, we think we can sell the heck out of that thing. So then I knew, it reaffirmed. I thought, we probably could, but it reaffirmed that. So then what we did do, then I started manufacturing them and taking them to retailers around.
Yeah, we did a really soft launch around like the Morse area, really. We did, Moose Jaw, Swift Current, and we were getting reorders in November because we only got our patent, like the patent
pending status.
In August. So the season was kind of done.
Right.
But so we were pleasantly surprised that we were getting reorders in November, and it's like, wow.
Yeah.
We hadn't anticipated that, so that was actually kind of cool.
Yeah, because that's one thing that you hear from a lot of new businesses too. It's like it's getting the sell in the first place is tough, but it's like you don't actually know if it's working until you get to the reorders.
Yes.
That start
Exactly.
Because you might be able to fool somebody to bring something on one time.
Yep.
But if it's no good, you'll never get the reorder.
Yeah.
So that's cool that it actually happened kind of in the off season that you're starting to see those popping up.
Yes.
So then you know you're onto something.
So it was an affirmation for us that to keep continuing with this and get after it and start building these things.
Wow.
Yeah, because we discovered that people don't only use them for their steps, decks, and patios. They use them for all kinds of different things.
Yeah. I have that written down here. I was like, I want to ask this question. What's the oddest or the weirdest thing you've heard somebody using them for? Or do you get that kind of feedback?
They use them for everything.
Didn't we just have a maple syrup?
We had a guy just bought some out in, I think he was in Quebec, and has these big drums of maple syrup, and the stand that he has for him is for whatever, always shifting. So he bought them to weld on this stand to level it. But I mean, we've had retailers in Sherwood Park, Alberta, sell them to industrial type applications like tank farms and stuff like that.
A guy in Calgary owned a bar, and he had those big old rustic bar tables, and you know what that's like.
And kind of a wood plank floor,
Yeah.
and the tables were always moving.
So he
bought them and installed them in there. And
That's a good idea.
So he could stop folding up coasters and putting
Yes.
them underneath.
Exactly, right?
yeah.
Exactly.
We had a farmer buy him to lift up his grain tank to change out the load cells. He stuck him in there and just screwed and lifted the grain tank high enough that he could get out his load cells. And then it worked great, and it kept everything nice and even and lined up. So, I mean, it's just it's a real simple thing that people buy and use them for, you name it.
Yeah.
Holy.
Yeah.
So that was 2015 then? Is that when you kind of got it into your first store? 15, 16?
20. Well, it was the end of 2015. So
Yeah.
So in the beginning, I'm curious about this. In the beginning, how many could you make in a single day?
Well, when we were revved up, it kind of progressed too. I mean, first I'd built a little jig that I could clamp everything and weld it myself. And then it got busier.
Right.
So then I built another jig that it worked a lot quicker. It quick clamped a lot quicker, and started going with that. And that lasted a month, and I couldn't keep up. So then I built these great big jigs that you could load them up.
Oh, you
and
do a bunch.
One guy would load them, and one guy would weld.
We had the whole family down there.
Yeah. So
Holy smokes.
Kids, get down here.
At that time, you were still taking a big washer and a nut and welding it to it?
By that time, we were subcontracting the laser cutting out.
I see.
So we'd get the plates all laser cut, and then they'd send them to, I'd go pick them up, and then we'd build them at our shop.
But you'd have to weld the bolt on, or that was part that came?
Yeah, we had to.
Or sorry, the nut on?
Yeah, the nut and the top round plate, and also the bolt and the bottom round plate were all welded on.
Oh, yeah,
and,
I guess that piece is welded too. Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
and those all sat in the jig, and they were all welded from the bottom, And it just, and that went super quick. To answer your question, we probably could have, at that time, we were probably turning out probably up to a couple hundred a day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So of course we had other businesses too. We were doing other things, but when the leveler really started to get busy, we'd, pick a couple of days a week and really buckle down and get after it and build them. And then I had one fella that had worked for me for many years. Before the leveler, if there was nothing doing, he'd be working on a truck or whatever. But when the leveler came along, then that's what he was doing. He always had something to do.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I need to go back because I said 2015 we did that. It was 2017.
Yeah, I think.
We did the soft launch.
when you first kind of got into
15
retail.
is kind of when he started thinking about that.
Right. And so when did you have to start looking at manufacturing? Like when did you outgrow your own capacity?
Well, I didn't get in it to be the manufacturer.
Yep.
I mean, I had the wherewithal to do that, but I knew I had a good product, and I knew it was a sales game, right? The more people that you let know about your product, the more retailers you get it in, the more you're going to sell. So I knew that we weren't going to be able to stay manufacturing. We built the first 4,000 of them, and then during that process, I'm looking for manufacturers. So I'm sending out requests for quotes of getting cutting and things like that. And then our manufacturer that we went with, he eventually got back to me and he said to me, a couple of the other quotes that you got, I'm going to be better because we do all the cutting for those companies as well. So
That was in 2018 when we.
Yeah.
Yep.
And of course, like I said, that was a necessary step because I didn't want to stay manufacturing. I wanted to have a good manufacturer, but that was kind of an arduous process too, because a lot of manufacturers, they're used to making, build me 5 or build me 10. And they didn't understand that the process where you have to get it at a good enough price so you can scale it, we were having prices coming back more than what our retail price is in the marketplace now.
Right.
So it was a long process, but this manufacturer does a tremendous amount of laser cutting. So they're able to cut a lot of our parts around everything else that they cut, and that was a real advantage for us.
What do you mean around, like time-wise or off the same sheet? They
Off
were
the
cutting
same
like
sheet.
your little circles
Yeah.
could be cut off the little
They
corner.
can
over
use
here.
all the weight.
So
that's
these guys
cool.
are cutting combine parts and they're cutting trailer parts
Yeah.
and stuff like
So
that.
they'll take the little section that's
And
not
I
used.
went with him
Yeah.
with that idea. I asked him what he did with all his scrap steel, and he said, well, I haul them in for scrap, just like everybody else.
Yeah, yeah.
I said, what if you could get value out of that? What if you could cut these 3/16 washers
Yep.
all around your other parts? He said, that would definitely give us better value. I said, well, okay, then you can build them for my price.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, man, do you have any more questions that kind of come up here?
Not yet. Yeah, that whole process, my wife, she sews stuffed animals.
Yep.
And we go and sell them at trade shows and stuff like that. But that was how she beats everybody in price too, because she spends a lot of time patterning out large quantities and making sure every little piece of the fabric is used, right?
Right.
So when you said
Yes.
that, I was like, totally, that makes
Yes.
so much sense.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. We got a comment in here from Carly, who's our manager up in Saskatchewan, that says, the simplest tools are always the best. Love the GH levelers. Proud to sell them to our customers. They're on every deck quote. So I imagine that you probably did replace those other products on a lot of shelves. I'm guessing. Like there was some other products out there that gave you adjustability. We talked about them before.
Yep.
Cindercrete had their thing. Pylex had their thing. Have you found that you've kind of moved in and they've disappeared off the shelves, or are people selling them in tandem?
Well, I think definitely for some of the retailers, we've impacted the sales of those other products, for sure. I think the real advantage for a retailer is that if you're stocking some of those other products, you have to have various sizes of those. Or, they have to be able to fit on a 4x4 or 6x6.
Yep.
And ours is so simple. You just have to stock one product, and it'll fit on everything, and it'll do what those other ones will do, plus more. I mean, those other ones are designed to go on the bottom. Ours can go on the bottom. Ours can go on the top.
Yep.
It can go, it's just so much simpler.
And,
So
we also have an engineer certificate that they will hold 18,000 pounds, so they're very robust. And
Oh yeah, that's
Because a lot of those other ones are what? Like if they're even-
2750
Yeah.
$27.50 at the most.
at the most.
And you're at
Yeah.
18,000.
And
we're at 18,000.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they can be utilized for lots of different purposes.
And that's why it is used for a lot of different purposes. Obviously it works great on a deck, but if somebody has something that, like a footing for their house or their cabin,
Yep.
actually we get a lot of call for cabin owners and homeowners that just have a crawl space and it's always shifting. And then they'll either add this right to their grade beam or add this to, a plate or a sill plate,
Yep.
or they'll make their own little teleposts out of it and stick it underneath there. And we actually sell quite a few to folks who do that.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I don't recall. I think you guys first met Wade, and I don't know where it was when you guys first
WRLA.
pitched. Was it at WRLA
Yeah.
that you kind of pitched?
Yeah.
So you had a booth there at that time, or
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was our first trade show.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that would have been in Calgary, likely.
Yeah, and that
Yeah,
was
it
in
was.
18.
And because I remember him coming back and talking about it and trying to explain it to me, whatever. And I without seeing it, it's hard to
Yep.
understand why it's simpler than what was already out there. Because in your mind, like those other products were just kind of the way you did it forever. And
Yep.
like the weird thing is we all knew the problems with them, but nobody thought like we should do it better. It's just that's just the way it was. You're
Yep.
just going to have the ugly block. You never spent too much time
Right,
thinking
yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
So when he came back to us, like, there's a better one. Okay.
And you're like, yeah, sure.
But he's like, no, they're like, I think they'll do really well. And of course, when we first saw them, I can't remember when we brought them on. Must have been maybe
It would have
19,
been-
maybe then.
Well, it would have been in 18.
In 18?
Yeah, because
Oh, 'cause we would've saw it in January.
In January
Right,
of
right,
18
right.
is
Yeah.
when we were at WRLA.
Yeah, and I can and right away, like they caught on right away, and
Yeah.
we same thing. Like we don't carry the Cindercrete ones anymore. We still bring in a handful of the Pylex ones for somebody who's insists on using
Yeah.
them, or
Right.
they're already on the deck and they're adding something or whatever. But we would sell a handful of those anymore. Like it's on its way out, and these things are really taking over because nobody has. There's no drawback. There's nothing where the other ones win. There's no
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
There's no
Does
benefits.
it hold more? No, it doesn't hold more. The other
Yeah.
ones, right?
Yeah.
They're bigger, they're bulkier, they don't look as nice, they don't hold as much. They're
They take up more shelf space.
right, and there's like some of those ones even laterally don't have a lot of support
No.
either. Like they
They
kind of
don't.
sit on a stilted way. It's like that
Yeah.
doesn't look super
Yeah.
sturdy.
Yeah.
If your deck isn't, tethered to your house really good, they can be flimsy.
Yeah.
It can actually move.
Yeah.
Whereas you're not going to get that with this.
Yeah, and the pricing's about it's similar. They're about
Yep.
the same. So it's like it's really an easy sell. So fast forward to what I'm gonna guess was probably sometime last year.
Yep.
You guys decided to do what? You decided your TV was in your future.
That was more Collette decided.
Okay. So I'm eager to hear about how this all happened.
Yeah.
Well, I just kept saying, I think there's an opportunity there, and I think we should explore that. So I filled out the Dragon's Den application and sent it in, and lo and behold, they contacted us. And at that time, we did something virtual with a couple of producers from Calgary and Toronto, I believe.
Yep.
And so then they liked our pitch and said, would you be able to come to the show? And so we said, absolutely. So, yeah, so that was in February is when we did the pitch. And then we were supposed to go in April to Toronto. And, of course, because of the way things were in the world at that time, they changed it to May. And then, no, we couldn't go then yet. And then we went June 4th is when we did our pitch. So...
You made that sound really easy.
Anybody can
we
do
filled
it.
out an application. They called. They said, "Can you come to Toronto?" And
They also filled out a patent without thinking.
right, right.
Yeah.
But so you filled out the application, and then literally you just kind of sit back and wait, and they go through these applications. Like, what's required in that process? I guess. Do you have to send pictures, or do you have to send product,
Yes.
or like?
Yeah, no, we didn't send product at that stage. We sent
Some pictures.
Pictures?
We did a little video too, did we not?
no. Oh
didn't.
yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
we did. Yes, we did.
So, and then the producers got a hold of us. We actually had, the year before we had applied, and the producers got a hold of us that year too, and asked us.
we had to do it virtually that year too, as well.
Yeah, we did a virtual pitch to them. They said,
Yeah.
we really like the product. So we'll let you know if you make the live show. But is there anything you can do to be more entertaining? and I'm thinking, well, I sell a deck leveling footing,
Yeah.
Like,
Come on.
I don't know.
I could do a dance.
Yeah. So we didn't make the live show that year. The next year, Collette reapplied, and the producers got hold of us again. And just before we did our pitch to the producers, Dragon's Den is really good in helping entrepreneurs, have successful pitches. So they had a little pitching 101
Tutorial kind of
thing on the internet. So we went on it and we watched it, and Michelle Romano said something that really resonated with both of us. She said, "You've got 7 seconds to attract our attention, and if you don't, it's just, even if it's a great product, it's hard for us to get into it."
Right.
Because they see so many pitches, right?
Yeah.
So I went to the bedroom and grabbed my guitar. In my former life, I played in a band for quite a few
there you
years,
go.
and came out and I wrote a little jingle, and that's how we opened our pitch to the producers, and that seemed to be the ticket for us. Was the entertainment part of it,
Right,
because the show it's a great show, and it's there to showcase entrepreneurs and their product.
Yeah.
But it still has to be entertaining.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's one of the things that was part of the thought process, and I think that was integral in us making the show as well.
So you said something that put a question in my head. You had a tip from Michelle Romano before the show ever happened. So do you go through, do you meet the Dragons ahead of time before that'll happen?
No,
or how did she
this
get
was
that?
just an online thing that they had done.
We'd
I
gotten
see.
an
Video
email
that they
saying
made.
they were doing a webinar,
Yeah.
so if we wanted to join, we
I
could.
see.
Yeah.
So
It
it
wasn't
was
personal advice. It was just
No.
her saying like,
Right.
They had done a
Exactly.
little
I
set.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just attended it. We didn't participate in it. We just attended and
Okay.
listened to them.
So there's no rehearsal.
No.
You just like the first time you ever see the 5, I think it's usually 5 of them,
Yeah.
is when you walk out there.
Exactly.
So how are
Yeah.
the nerves feeling on that?
Bizarrely, I was not nervous at all.
Really?
We
Yeah.
had practiced a lot, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We had practiced in front of family and in front of friends. We had
Okay.
done lots
Okay,
of,
cool.
and then like the 2 days before there, because we had to go early because we had to do COVID tests.
Right.
So then and of course everything was shut down because it was COVID, right?
Right.
So then we just kind of had time to kill. So we would practice constantly, like just him and I. We would throw questions at each other, and yeah.
Yeah. So
So-
and for me, I knew the 1 minute elevator pitch. When you get out there and you talk to the Dragons and tell them about your product, and of course I sang my little jingle. That was the only part I was worried about. I wanted that to go off nice and smooth.
Right.
And then when we did the elevator pitch and described our product, I wanted that to be fluent. I didn't want to, sometimes you watch a show and people forget what they're doing.
Yeah.
Or forget their numbers or whatever. And
So
we
that was the only
knew all of
part that I was nervous about, but we had practiced it so much. I tell people it's like if you're play hockey or baseball, you're always nervous to get out there. You want to get out there because you're nervous.
Yeah.
But as soon as you get out there, the nerves melt away because it's game on. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right.
I just got to do it now.
Yeah.
And that's what it was for us when we got out in front of the Dragons. As soon as we walked out, you're a little bit nervous doing the walk down the hallway, but then you walk out there, it's okay. Game on. So
Cool.
that's
so
how it was
cool.
for us.
If I recall, you had 2 dragons interested? Is that right? Or 2 offers on the table?
We actually had 3.
Was it 3?
We were with the dragons for probably about 50 minutes. But
5-0?
5-0.
Holy smokes.
Oh, really? They really cut that down.
Yeah.
Hey?
Yeah.
And they actually do a really good job because you can't tell really if you look at it.
No.
So Arlene had actually given us, she was the first one to give us an offer.
Okay.
And then as the other 2 started debating and quibbling back and forth, then she said, you know what, Collette and Jeff, I'm going to be out. So she does say that in that pitch or in that segment, but she had made us an offer first.
And so the ones that were on the show was Manjeet and who was the other one? That was
Vince.
And Vince, right.
Yeah, they both made us offers.
Okay.
So, and then for us, we had to decide, okay, so which is the best offer for us, and you didn't see that part in the editing too, but after we got our offers, they said, so what do you want to do? So Collette and I are sitting there whispering to each other, trying to figure out which offer we want to go.
They don't let you take some time off.
Well, they ask. There's a booth you can go to.
Okay.
And then, but we've watched the show so many times. As soon as you go to the booth, then they change the deal.
Yeah, they give them time to
start
talking back and
so they asked. They said, "Do you want to go to the booth?" And we said, "Nope. We watch the show too much. We're not going to do that."
So you knew ahead of time there was no chance you were walking off to go discuss anything.
We knew.
Right.
That's funny.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, we just took the offer that we felt would be best for us.
Yeah.
Which was Manjeet's offer.
Mm-hmm.
So
I felt like they didn't really. You said you went in really knowing your numbers, but I felt that they didn't really bring it up a whole bunch to you guys, which I thought was weird.
See, they did when they were talking to us, but they edited.
Oh, I see. I guess now that all makes sense. I was like,
50 minutes. Remember?
Yeah, they brought up the numbers a lot, and we talked about the numbers a lot, and they're very smart. I didn't even have to tell them my margins. I told them our sales, and I told them our cost, and bang, they said, okay, we know your margins.
Yeah.
Which I knew I was prepared for them to ask what our margins and stuff were, but they knew it right away.
Yeah. So what happens after you
what's next?
Accept a deal? Because I hear there's a bit of a due diligence that happens afterwards to make sure everything checks out. So what does that process look like? The behind the scenes stuff.
Go ahead.
Well, it's the show. What you do in the show and the deal you make on the show is totally different than due diligence. The show itself is primarily for entertainment.
Right.
So after we made a deal with Manjeet, basically they said, okay, that was the show. Now this is business. Let's sit down and talk business. So we submitted a bunch of documentations about our sales. We had a business plan.
And our patent and
our
all of that kind of stuff.
Does this all happen later then?
Yeah.
It's all afterwards. You go home after you've made the deal and you send that all to your dragon. And then depending on the dragon, that can take, up to a year or more to get through due diligence. Manjeet, she was pretty quick. It didn't take her long. We met because of COVID again. We met a couple different times virtually.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we didn't follow through with a deal with Manjeet. It was kind of a mutual thing. We didn't take, she was going to give us $50,000 for 20%. We recognized that if we were going to really blow it up, like, for example, she's got good ties with Lowe's. So there's 2,200 locations there. Well, that would take an investment, in the millions. And so she decided that, and mutually we decided that we wouldn't be taking that investment from her, but then also we wouldn't be giving up any of our company. But she did offer to keep helping us with marketing. So we met with her on a couple occasions with marketing advice. And then she also left the door open. She said, when you are ready to take on a big box retailer, Lowe's, she said, I'll be there for you and I'll supply my contacts for you.
Cool. Yeah.
Whoa.
So
that's super cool.
It was kind of a win-win for us.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that. You always hear sometimes they'll do those follow-up stories, right? Like, what happened with this? Whatever. And often it's like the deal didn't end up materializing, and sometimes
lots of
it
times
does.
that happens.
Yeah, I think my guess would be probably more than not, it likely falls apart at some point.
Actually,
right?
I think probably statistically speaking, more than not.
Yeah.
The deal does fall apart, you know. But
cool.
Making a deal on the air is really good. I mean, first of all, it's great to make a deal and not do the walk of shame. It's also it's a great affirmation of the product too, when you have dragons wanting the product. But it also, the exposure opens you up to all kinds of customers that are interested, but also other investors too. So
did the phone start ringing then after that aired? Was it like boom, you started getting calls from like retailers and investors, you're saying, as well, like that?
Yep.
Yes.
Pretty heavy.
Yeah, both retailers and some folks that were interested in investing. And of course, there was lots of marketing agencies and stuff that would phone us and say, hey, we can blow this up in the US.
Yeah. Right.
Just write us a check for $40,000 and
exactly.
And we'll look at it.
Yeah, and we'll look at it. So there was lots of that. But for us, just the exposure, I think, was the biggest thing that was a great takeaway for us.
It also legitimizes it too, right? It's so we can say it actually really is a good product. Yeah.
So I was wrong, but maybe I wasn't. Maybe it was edited out. I thought, because we were all guessing, are they going to get a deal? Are they going to get a deal?
Yeah.
And I thought, because I watched the show quite a bit as well, I thought that they were going to, the words of "this is a product, not a business" was going to come out of their mouths. Because I've seen that a lot with companies that come in, that businesses come in, they have kind of a single product, and the dragons often, especially when they're looking at box retail, are like, we need a suite of products. What else can you do? Was that ever a concern for them in your case, that it was just a single product?
Not really.
No, it wasn't.
Really? Hey.
And I agree with you. I kind of thought they might go down that road, but they didn't.
Interesting.
We did have Vince, who gave us an offer, said, can you develop more products? And I said, absolutely, we can.
Yeah.
But for us, we want to get good market share with this product first.
Right.
To me, I don't want to dilute it with developing other add-on products when they haven't even when the leveler itself hasn't quite caught on.
Right.
So, for example, for you guys, if you had now you've got the leveler and the base plate on your shelf. If I had, extensions for the leveler and maybe some plates that could be tilted on an angle for rooftop patios and stuff. If I had all this stuff with it, it would confuse it.
Right.
I think to start with. But for us, once we have an audience or customers that are used to using the leveler the way it is, then we can start introducing some of those other products.
Yeah, I think you're right in that there's something to be said with just having a simple offering too. I know that just to name another product that we carry that we really love, the Toya Grid pergola system, one of the things that drew me to it initially was the fact that the product itself was very simple and easy to use and modern looking, and it could allow a homeowner DIY to put up their own pergola in a couple hours tops and be done. But it was also nice that it was one product, it was modular, you could do different things with it, but it was like the number of SKUs was very small. But over the last couple of years, they've continued to release we should do ones that have peaked gable roofs, and we should do ones that are this shape, and we should do these brackets. And now it's now the SKU catalog is pages long. And
Great.
For me, we're still buying it. They're still good partners of ours, and they're still great products. But for me, it's lost a bit of its appeal because it used to be so simple that anybody can understand it looking at one page.
Yeah.
And 8 SKUs, right? Instead of 80 SKUs, and you could do all these different things with it. And so I feel like it's kind of lost a bit of its luster because it's gotten a little bit complicated. So certainly there's something to be said with keeping it simple too.
Absolutely.
Well, and we want to create brand awareness, right? We want, when people are thinking about building their deck, they think of the leveler. Oh, we need that product.
The leveler in and of itself, though, seems like multiple products just by itself, right? It levels your deck, it levels your shed, it levels it's already a suite of products in one product.
Right. It is. Yeah, for sure it is.
Right?
Yeah, if one leg's shorter than the other, you can bolt.
Yeah, you can just bolt it to the bottom. Pirates they would love it because you could just right down to the ship and you wouldn't fall off.
Exactly.
You guys we've ran into you down in the States, I think in Baltimore.
Yes,
you guys did Deck Expo down there one time. I can't remember if you were at other shows or not, but how has the response been outside of Saskatchewan? And the reason I ask that is the whole industry of the pyramid blocks and whatever was very well ingrained here. Everybody, most decks are built that way here.
Yep.
But I know in other areas, especially down in the States, they're a lot more strict about their code requirements, and they are required to do piles. And I'm guessing that the kind of surface grade block type market is smaller down there. Have you found that to be the case yourself? The more resistance in certain markets?
Well, definitely the Canadian market itself is what we've been focusing more on.
Yeah.
Just because demographically it's easier for us to do that.
Yeah.
And we have dabbled in the U.S. The thing about this product, it's anybody can see how easy it is to use. But it's also contractors themselves, they get set in their ways. So they're used to building things a certain way. And in the States, especially in the northern states, but all over, I mean, California, you've got shifting soil conditionings all the time. Colorado, you get it too with that lignite soil of theirs. The northern states, well, they're a lot like us.
Yep.
They got that freeze-thaw cycle.
Yeah.
And in a lot of their building codes, there is a provision for certain size and types of decks to be built on the surface of the ground. Sometimes it just has to be a certain square footage or a certain height.
Right.
But generally speaking, a lot of contractors aren't doing it that way. Yet, if you drive down there, and I have, kind of a nerd, I'll be driving in the city and I'll take off into a residential area and I'll see decks built that way, the old way with the pyramid blocks and stuff.
Okay.
And so that's the frustrating part for me is to, when they say, well, we can't do that here because of our building code, to say, yes, you can. If your customer wants this type of deck, this is a very easy way for you to do it.
Right. So yeah, I guess my perspective is probably skewed because the reference point I'm getting is from contractors in a Facebook community or ones that I know down there, and they're of course building, to a certain level, and they're like, nope, we do piles, that's all we ever do, whatever. But there's certainly the entire DIY market or other contractors that just don't care about digging holes and putting things in the ground. That sure, they
Well, if
probably
you're
could
in lake
do it, right?
country or anything like that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You're not going to be able to do the piles and stuff. So
And you have to keep in mind that the leveler works on a pile too.
Yes.
I mean, you can the only difference is you put the leveler on a pile and now you have put some adjustability into your deck. And some contractors will say, well, once I build a deck, it'll never move. And quite honestly, that's not the case, especially in some of the areas. Like California, for example, has got a lot of seismic activity there.
Right.
Things move there.
Right.
They just do. So if you have the opportunity to build adjustability into it, why wouldn't you?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But then there's that one-track mind attitude. A lot of contractors, if they only use piles, well, that's great. If that's the way they do it, that's fine. Or steel piles, they're a great product too. But there's places where, there's camps at lakes and stuff like that, or RV parks, where you can't put down a permanent pile.
Right.
There's certain areas where there's building restrictions. You can make a building, but it can't have permanent footings.
Right.
There's national parks and stuff like that have those types of things. So that's the message that we always want to get out for those that say, well, you can't use that here. Well, in some cases, this might be the only product that you can use that's going to, address some of these issues.
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah. So that shows my naivete and
Yeah,
the whole
that's right.
thing, because I didn't realize it. I thought this would kind of be your hotbed where we're a little bit more relaxed on building inspection things in some of the markets.
Quite a number of stores in Ontario as well, because again, Jeff, before COVID hit, Jeff and I took our camper and drove out to Toronto, and we actually met people, went into stores and showed them the product. And so we're in, I don't even know the number of stores that we're in, but we're probably in 40 to 50 stores across Ontario.
And how many total would you say? Like you've got you probably have the most support here because you started here and you kind of grew out from there, right?
because we've been able to go to the stores, and we got some in Alberta too.
Yeah.
BC's a little bit, but we're hoping to do a road trip this spring to kind of
Face-to-face sales.
Total is I can't remember.
I think we're 145 stores, I think. Yeah.
Wow.
That sounds pretty
across
sweet
Canada.
gig. Like,
Yeah.
let's look up the trailer and go to some like sweet, beautiful parts of the country and sell things while we're doing it. Like that sounds perfect.
Yep.
So your strategy for the most part, you do trade shows, and then you do just walk into a store, no appointment necessary kind of thing. Walk in and be like, "What do you think?"
Absolutely, we don't let them know we're coming. We just
we
show
cold
up.
Gives them a
call.
chance to say no,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and the thing is, for us, we learned early on that we've probably got something like a 90% success rate if Collette and I walk in a store with our product in hand. So it doesn't make sense for us to not do that. Of course, COVID really put a,
makes it tougher.
kibosh that for 2 years, because it wasn't responsible for us to be going in and out of all those retailers. But now that we're kind of seeing the end of that, we're going to get back to that. And when we walk in, of course, we're walking into a lot of independent retailers where the owner is there and they've got a vested interest in having new and innovative products for their customers. And when we show it to them, they, especially the ones that have building background, they get it right away and they can see an opportunity for that product and we make a sale. And that's the other thing we do when we go on a sales trip. We take the camper and we take my 1-ton truck and I load it up with levelers. And so when they say, we probably would try a couple boxes or 10 boxes, I say to them, well, here it is right here.
We got some.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is the best sales tactic.
Right?
If you want it, I got it.
It's right here.
Interestingly enough, we've been in several retailers, and Collette can attest to this, where we're standing in line waiting to talk to the lumber manager, and we've had a customer come up and say, where'd you get those? I want to buy those.
That's cool.
And that's the best sales pitch right there.
Well, we were talking about this before we started the podcast about virtual anything trade shows, and we were talking about how the point of a trade show, the nice thing about a trade show is being able to touch and feel the products. It's hard to sell something from a picture.
It is.
Even though your product is so simple, there's something to be said about putting your hands, twisting it around, and being like,
absolutely,
I totally
I get it.
Right?
Yeah.
And even myself, like I said, Wade tried to explain it to me, and I'm like, what makes it better than the other ones that also do the twisty rod thing? Like, but then you see it and you're like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
We have one comment here from Haney Construction. I can't remember where he's from. New Jersey area, somewhere in the States. I used to make these myself every time I needed them. So glad that there's now a commercially available and engineering rating option.
Yep.
So
perfect.
To your point, simple idea, just took somebody to take it beyond the shop. And Monk J Man, what's the product? I just logged in. So the product is called GH Leveler. What's your website?
It's www.gHleveler.com.
That's with 2 L's or 3 L's, depending on how you say it. .com.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for those who are just kind of tuning into this maybe a little bit late, an adjustable footing for decks, sheds, anything that needs leveling. Yeah. It gives what do you get, like 3 inches or 4 inches of adjustability on there?
Yeah, about 3.5 inches, something like that.
Okay.
And if they just Google GH the leveler and spell it with 2 L's, we've got enough presence out there that you'll find it.
Yeah. And they can actually see our dragon's den pitch on there too.
Oh, nice.
Just scroll down a little bit. So,
cool.
So that's been helpful too for people to kind of see the.
Yeah,
100%. It legitimizes you in consumers' minds too a little bit.
Yes.
It's like, oh, that's been on Dragon's Den.
Build some trust.
As seen on TV type of thing, right?
Yep.
Of course, you can also buy them from tuds.ca if you're just a consumer looking to try a few out. I'll just sneak that in there. So what's next? One thing, you mentioned extensions. Is that like
Shane wants to know.
Yeah.
But the one thing that we do find sometimes is it'd be nice if it had just a little bit more adjustability, because there's been the odd year where 3.5 inches isn't enough.
Right.
This soil here is
bolt
ridiculous.
them together.
3 years ago, whatever it was, or 4 years ago maybe, we had just the driest summer ever. It rained once in May.
Yeah.
And that was all we got all year. And then once in September or something.
Yeah.
And the ground shrunk so much that a lot of our builders, contractors that had built decks in the spring were having to go back out in the fall already and cut longer posts because the deck had dropped 5 inches, 6 inches in some spots. Can you tell us? Are you going to come up with a longer threaded rod or an extension option, or is that still hush-hush?
Well, it's not hush-hush. It's something that we're looking at. So there's 2 ways that we can make it so that the product is longer. So we can make a longer rod. You can make a rod, either a product with a longer rod. There's ideas we've had to actually just make a little stud extender, so you could actually add it on to the leveler. But we're also looking at perhaps making just an add-on to the base that's maybe 2 or 3 inches big, so it could just slide on, and now you don't have to do any more. You just adjust run it all the way up again, slide
Right.
this on, and then
Just
adjust
like a
it.
big shim in a way, kind
Yeah,
of.
exactly.
Sits in a plate.
But
and-
something that slips onto the leveler. So
Interesting,
it's
yeah.
simple, easy to do.
Yep.
The same diameter as the base. It'll be powder coated. So it's, aesthetically, it'll still look good. And with my way of thinking, we want to do things that are simple. Simple,
Yep.
simple.
Yep.
And so there's lots of things that we can do in that regard, but whatever it's going to be really simple, and until that happens, it is nice if it does shift, you can actually take that 3.5 inches that it's adjusted out, run it all the way up and just shim up your pad a little bit, with some crushed rock or whatever, and then run her back down and away you go again.
Yep.
Yeah, you can. There's certainly a ways to get around it, because that's an extreme circumstance. In most cases, at 3 inches, it would be enough.
Way more
You're
than
mostly
enough.
dealing with the frost heave, which is a inch or
Right.
2 or
Right.
maybe
Yes.
3, but like that's
Yeah.
usually what you're dealing with, right?
Yeah, and in really bad areas, sometimes it's adjusted all the way up, but then all of a sudden, a year or two later, you're starting to run
Adjusting
it in.
it down. Yep.
Yeah. You're definitely going up and down every spring and fall in our area with
Yeah.
the frost heave.
Yeah,
Same with us,
my dad
too.
put them on his shed, and he's out at the lake, and he's constantly adjusting them, like every year, right? Because the
Yeah.
water table's so high. So.
Right.
And it shifts and
Yep.
changes.
Yep.
Yeah. Monk J-Man says, I have Instagram them before. So there you go. You got some notoriety out there.
Oh, perfect.
WC Building Supplies in Sylvan Lake. Are you in there? Do they have your stuff?
No.
Well, here's your chance.
Yeah. Oh, we are in Sylvan Lake, are we not?
No, we're not there. We're in Lacombe, I think.
Lacombe, yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, WC Building Supplies, Sylvan Lake.
Oh, yeah, no, not Sylvan
Go to
Lake. That's
ghleveler.com, put your order in.
Yeah.
Anything else you guys want to tell us about your product or what you're up to these days?
Yeah, I think for us now, it's just, we're really optimistic now that it's the end of COVID. And, we've had a good wet year. There seems to be a lot of optimism in the market. So we're quite hopeful that this is going to be a banner year for us.
Good.
And we see lots of people wanting to get back and do outdoor projects and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's...
Yeah, we're super excited to be able to go and meet with customers again.
Yes.
Meet with the retailers, and
Exactly, yeah.
that's going to be nice.
Been a long time coming.
Yep.
Where can people find you in person? You're going to be at WRLA next week, so if there's any dealers in Western Canada / Western Ontario going to the show, you'll be there.
Yep.
Anything else on the books right now for other areas?
Just a sales trip. We've got a sales trip planned through part of Alberta and BC to start.
Okay.
And that's going to happen in the middle of April. But other than that, we're easy to get a hold of. All my contact information is on our website. And if they just Google GH the Leveler, it'll come up right there. And for us, we're a pretty simple operation. You just need to get a hold of us, and we'll look after you.
Yeah, it's
That's always-
Jeff and I, so.
Yeah, I've always liked that about you guys.
Yeah.
We're Saskatchewan people, you're Saskatchewan people.
Yeah.
It's just an easy relationship, right?
Yeah.
I think we're pretty low maintenance too. It's like we put in an order. It's like, we need
Yeah.
these.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
when? Next time you're in town.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you guys drop them all off. That's,
Yeah, exactly.
That's how it goes.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
So that's awesome. Okay, so for anybody listening who's interested in learning more about the product, you guys have Instagram and Facebook and whatnot as well.
We do, yeah.
GHtheleveler.com? GH Leveler.
Leveler.
GH
GH
Leveler.
Leveler.
Sometimes sometimes not.
Yeah.
GH Leveler with 2 L's.com to find out more information, and you can get a hold of Jeff and Collette if you're interested in trying out their product. So thank you guys for taking out time of your day
thank you.
to spend it with us and teach
Great.
people about
Thanks.
stuff. And
Thanks for having us.
you betcha. Until next week, folks, see you later.
Hey, thank you for listening to the Ultimate Deck Podcast. Now you know what we're about. Check the site, come and shop. UltimateDeckShop.com. Hit us right away for sponsorships or tell us if you want to collaborate. Let's go. Check us out on any social networks. Thank you for listening.